Our speaker is Jim Krueger. Jim was born and raised in Appleton, and you'll recall he's done other wonderful presentations for us. One on growing up in Appleton and one on St. Joseph's Church, as I recall, too. He's married to Lori, who's here, his wife of 49 years. Together they have 3 boys, Joshua, Tyler, and Alexander, and 5 grandsons, Aiden, Chance, Brighton, Cullen, and Grant. Jim has been a member of St. Joseph's Church for 69 years, where he has taught children's liturgy for the past 25 years. Recently, Jim served on the 150th Jubilee Committee as chairman of the Historical Committee. He's consulted frequently for historical church information and questions. Jim installed the time capsule cover stone after the capsule was placed inside. Jim's career spanned 45 years working at Presto Products for 33 of those years and at Larson Converting Company for 12 as safety manager, and he's now retired. He's had a lifelong passion for Appleton history, is currently a board member of the Appleton Historical Society. It was due to Jim that the spire on top of Trinity Lutheran Church was saved and now sits in front of your museum at 128 North Durkee Street. He enjoys collecting Appleton history, preserving memorabilia. Most of all, he enjoys sharing his memories and collection with people who enjoy it as much as he does. So without further ado, I would call up what sometimes his wife refers to as Hector the Collector. Jim, you're on.
Thank you, Tom. Well, we're here tonight to talk about drive-ins in Appleton, and I have a passion for 2 of them. One I worked in the 60s, and I even see one person here that knows what that drive-in is about, maybe a couple. And also JD's, who I've been a lifelong charter member of, attending and eating and visiting and being friends with JD and his wife and family. So I just want to kind of mention, my brother Brian is a history major and does tons of research, and he researched these drive-ins for me. And I added the wording to them and the pictures and stuff. And between the 2 of us, I think it's a pretty nice historical perspective. Now, you may find a drive-in or 2 that we missed. It's only because they were so obscure or not known that we couldn't find them. So all of these have some notoriety to them. Okay, Brian, you can hit it. I'm not going to read this first preamble because we're going to talk about all of it, but it's all of the drive-ins. But basically, the first drive-in that opened that we know of is McDonald's in California, in San Bernardino. And that was a McDonald's, and then that started catching on across the country. And in 1947, the Snack Shack opened up in Appleton. And that's the first one we could find on record. And then it goes all the way down, and the big hitters now are Tom's and JD's, who are in business 50 and 60 years. In the 1960s, drive-ins were popular with high school hangouts. Routinely after games, Dags and Blacks would be swamped with teenagers. I grew up from a block away from Black's on Mason Street, and it was owned by Dave Black. Mr. Black was a physical education teacher at Appleton West. At the time, it was Appleton High. And later at Appleton East. Black's was a favorite hangout, and later Black's sons, Pete and Bill, ran the business. Now, my brother actually, we all witnessed this, but my brother was only like 12, I think, when this happened. In August of '65, Black's had a back-to-school dance, and it caused quite a stir. We had the Yorks from Appleton playing there, and the city of Appleton was completely against Black's and did not want them to have the dance, but I'll get into that later. When the dance was over, a fight was going to break out between a friend of ours, Lee, and another real tough character that wasn't our friend. And they wound up behind Lincoln School a block away. And my brother said it was big stuff. I was only 9 years old. It was something like out of the movies. It was like West Side Story. And of course, the fight literally probably lasted 3 or 4 punches, and it was done. And Lee was pummeled, and we all ran for the gates because we thought the police were coming. So That was my brother's memory of Blacks and the dance. Now, the last thing it says here is the old gang that hung out at Blacks in the 60s still periodically has reunions and reminisces. We have had 4 reunions in the last 50 years. As many as 40 people have attended them. So I think that's pretty cool. In fact, we just had one. So, all right, next slide. I'm just going to hit some highlights of what drive-ins were. They served food on metal trays that they hung on your window. When you were finished, you would beep your horn for service, or if you were done, they would take it away. Drive-ins often had car hops. They may have approached your cars on roller skates to take your order. And in the early days of drive-ins, many were just walk-up counters, and they had really no inside seating. Some may have had picnic tables to sit on. And so when the cold weather approached, the drive-ins would shut down until spring. People would often sit in their cars and eat their food. Actually, I started doing that with my wife during COVID. We did the whole thing over again. Hot dogs were a very popular item in drive-ins because they were inexpensive and they were very easy to make, and you could eat them, you know, and they had the little trays, you could eat them in the car. Shakes were made from scratch using real ice cream, whole milk, malted milk powder, and the flavoring. Shakes were then mixed using a Appleton beach mixer. The mixer always ended up spraying a little. Did anyone work in a drive-in? Anyone? I always would have a stripe across my chest of chocolate because you took the cup down too fast and it would spray you. All right, and of course we wore white shirts, which was really nice. That always looked good. Many drive-ins also served root beer in ice cold glass mugs that looked huge but were actually mostly glass, and there wasn't very much root beer in them. If you want to check that out, I have one. You can see it's really not that big. And drive-ins often started out as small buildings that were really glorified shacks. None of them had basements. They were just a box sitting on pavement. They didn't feature comfortable indoor seating, and you know, that would come. They'd open up and get going. All right, next. Okay, here's the first drive-in we could find in Appleton. It was at 1325 East Wisconsin Avenue, Chuck's Drive-In. You can see it had a very limited menu. Very, you know, kind of just liquid and ice cream. It opened in 1947 and closed in 47. Now I went to track this place down, and it's a parking lot, so it must have really not been much. It's just, there's nothing there but pavement. Okay, next. This is the former lot. Well, the building was on the corner, it's gone. And it was on Wisconsin and Oasis Street. All right, Brian? Then the Snack Shack came along in 1947 and was sold in 1976. It became Mary's Family Restaurant. And again, you know, it was kind of the same fare, small amounts of food and mostly beer and ice cream. Okay, next. The Orange Bowl opened on Wisconsin Avenue in 1948 and closed in 1945. Does anyone remember that one? Where was it? Yep. It was where the new Burger King is now. And I wanted to note here, Spanish hamburgers. A lot of the restaurants served that, I think, because it was easy to make and it kept all day. You know, you could just keep scooping it out. Most things were 15 cents, and you know, like I said, that was common. Okay, next. The Orange Bowl closed, and Gibson Chevrolet Company bought it. And they made a used car lot. Now, did anyone buy a used car at Gibson's on Wisconsin Avenue? I did, okay, 2 people. And believe it or not, I told my brother about buying a 62 Chev station wagon. They're a Bel Air. And by God, if he didn't find an ad from that year for a 62 Bel Air wagon for sale, this kid can find anything. So I put Small World, all right? The Orange Bowl then became Gibson's Used Cars, and then became Burger King in 1986, which is still there today. So what I'm trying to do is show you the history of the lots and how they went. Okay, Brian? Colonial Freeze Drive-In on South Memorial Drive. It opened in 55 and closed in 60 and was owned by Jake Scale. What else did Jake Scale have? Does anyone remember?
Wonder Bar?
Yep, Colonial Wonder Bar. And I think that grew out of this drive-in.
It did, the big supper club was
Yeah.
main business.
Right. That drew out of this, and this drive-in was where that was. Okay, next. The Colonial Freeze Drive-In later became Scal's Colonial Wonder Bar, and that's a picture of that. And again, I apologize for these pictures not being all photographs, but this place has been gone for a long time. It's hard to get them. Okay, next, Brian. The Autodyne. Anyone ever eat at the Autodyne on West Wisconsin? Okay, this is interesting. It opened in 56 and closed in 64. It's a tiny little building. And if you notice, it says no waiting with the electronic car hop. You're served fast because your order goes directly over a two-way speaker system from the lighted menu serving station. And first you order, then you pay, and then the lady brings it out, and then you eat your food. So that was the electronic system.
You get hi-fi music.
Huh?
You get hi-fi music.
Right, yes, and they would play music too. All right, next. Oh, by the way, look at that menu. Fish lunches, shrimp baskets, chicken sticks, pork tenderettes, I'm not sure what those are, steak sandwiches. So they had quite a menu. As they advanced, more food came into the drive-ins. All right, Brian? When the Autodyne really got going, they were probably the first ones to have these things sort of like the outdoor, only they had a menu that lit up. And it's called the electronic car hop, which I think is really funny. But and then they had their big special on Tuesday and Wednesday. All right, next. Okay, now the Autodyne is a barber shop, and it's called Greasy Fingers. And it's there. It's exact same building. It's amazing. This stuff is still around. Okay, next. Dairy Queen opened up on South Oneida in 1950 and is still open in that location. And you can save 5 cents if you use that coupon. I don't know if they're still accepting it, but you can try. Okay, next. Then Dairy Queen opened a second store on 1819 North Richmond, and that was in 53, and that is still open today. And of course, it doesn't look like that anymore. It's been remodeled and has lots of inside seating. And they're going strong. Okay, next. Mary's A&W Drive-In at 115 South Pierce Avenue opened in 1958 and closed in 1963. Does anyone know where this one was? Okay, this is tucked in on Pierce Street, which used to go all the way through to College Avenue. Now it's just a street with nothing on it, really. There's no building on it. It's by the Boys Club. And there's a gas station on the back of it, or on the front of it, if you will. So that's the little restaurant. You can see it's just a box. That's all they were. Okay, next. That's the location. So this is Badger Avenue and College Avenue, and this is Pierce Street here. So, and that place is long gone too. Okay, next. Mary's A&W root beer, remember these, what a summer treat. When we were kids, we had 7 kids in my family, and my dad would come home with an ice cold brown jug of a gallon of root beer, and we would, fight to see who get the last drop out of the bottle. It was probably gone in 5 minutes, but we just loved it. So, and then the big mugs, again, that's their old logo. Okay, next. Mary's Drive-In at 2312 North Richmond opened in 1960. So now it's kind of moving from the A&Ws into more of a drive-in. It's getting to be more of a sit-down place. And, they're moving along. Okay, next. And here is their menu. This is the one on Badger. And they were open from 11 a.m. till midnight, which I cannot believe, but they were. And now things are getting a little more expensive. Stuff is 65 cents, and lunches are 60 cents, shrimp's 85. So, and they got car hop service at all times. All right? And they needed that because there was nowhere to sit. Okay, and this is Mary's Place today. And I'm going to throw in a little plug for them. I've recently had a couple of dinners where I catered their chicken, and it is just phenomenal, and they do a great job. So that's a free plug for them. Okay, next. Dags. Dags opened, that was on 1309 East Wisconsin. They opened in 1959 and closed in 66. And that was a family-owned operation. And you can see the prices, 15 cents and thick shakes for 20 cents. Okay, next. And again, no charge for takeouts. So I don't know what you're going to do. You couldn't eat it there. You had to take it out. But anyway. So I don't know, that must have just been an advertising thing from the Post-Crescent that they thought that was a good hook. And you can see their prices were up on their board. That was a neon board, that 15 cent, that's actually their sign. Okay, next. Dags closed in 1960, opened in 66 and closed in 67. Does anyone know why? Fire. A what? Fire. It blew up. There was a gas explosion and the drive-in basically is out on Wisconsin Avenue. Okay, next. And they had to close because of the explosion because there was literally no business there. Okay, now we'll go to the next one. Dags destroyed by fire, and that was in 1967. Okay, you can take the next one. And this was amazing. Nobody got hurt in that explosion. It was incredible. Okay, so now they're open back up in 68. It took them a year to get back on their feet, and now they're called Mars or Dagmars. So I think the Mars family or Mars business bought them, and Dags was going out because there was some advertising that still said Dagmars. And you can see the prices creeping up a little bit. Okay, next. Now Dags is Scuba's Seafood Restaurant. So the building's still there, which is the new building. The one that blew up was torn down and rebuilt. So that's what became a Dags. Okay, next. McDonald's on Richmond Street. This was at 1932 North Richmond. It was opened in 63. Now, however, that location is gone. And there are McDonald's in the area, but I didn't track them all down because I was only interested in the first ones.
Caboose was going to be there.
Yeah, he's going to be there. And then it's their first birthday. So they're going to have a big celebration. And there's going to be a lot of other surprises. So we should go to that. Should be nice. Okay, next. And now the former McDonald's is the Golden Basket. I'm not sure if that's accurate anymore, but the sign is still there, Golden Basket, and it's all been remodeled, so I assume it's going to be a restaurant. Henry's Drive-In. Who remembers Henry on Wisconsin Avenue? Okay, I'm going to ask this trivia question. Why did Henry's close? What was the rumor and why they closed? No.
Something about horse meat.
Ah, let's go. Okay, they opened in 63 and closed in 1972. That's their sign. That was out in front. Okay, next. Henry's Drive-In in 63. They had 15-cent burgers, 10-cent fries, and you can read those. I did find an ad. It was a special. I didn't put it in here because the ad wasn't very cool. But they at one time had 9 cheeseburgers for $1. It was a special. That was the most of anything. This was real big in the day, like 5 hamburgers for $1 or 8 hamburgers for $1, whatever. Okay, next. And then to get the students in, there was this VIP, and you would save at Henry's, and there's discounts. If you bought a hamburger normally at 15 cents, it was 10 cents if you're VIP. And by the way, there was no contest, drawings, gimmicks, or red tape, just good food and special prices. So that's what you got for your VIP card. Did anyone get a VIP card? Okay, next. Okay, Henry's demise. Henry was dogged by rumors that they used horse meat in their hamburgers. Numerous reports noted that Henry's never was found to have used horse meat, but by the time these reports came out and became public, the damage was done. It was always suggested that a big chain, you might think of who that would be, who a big chain would be, started these rumors and caused, and of course they denied it. Regardless of where the rumors started or how, the big chains were the death of smaller drive-ins. This is a little bit of humor. Okay, next. Okay, now this is the original Henry's. The last that it was in business was the Harmony Cafe. And if you notice, there's an H on the building that actually stood for Henry's. A lot of people thought it stood for horse meat, but it was Henry's. So, and it's still there, and it's still red. It's amazing. Okay, next. Black's Drive-In. Okay, this is near and dear to my heart. I hung out at Black's. I almost grew up at Black's. I mean, they were like almost my family. And I worked at Black's. So they basically were opened, called the Snow Cap in 1951, and they closed in 1968. And that is, actually here, this is the original restaurant. All of this was added on. It was a very small walk-up place. Black's originally purchased the drive-in as a source of income to send their boys to college. The Blacks, along with their 3 sons, Bill, Pete, and Jim, managed the store. And it was also a nice source of employment for high school kids because they worked at the drive-in too. I was there from 65 to 68. I started as a janitor and worked my way up to a counter and soda jerk. And in the early days, it was mostly a walk-up root beer and hot dog stand. I think that's all they sold was hot dogs. I'm not sure they had other food. And in the winter, the driveway was closed, and at Christmas, they sold Christmas trees. So they got a little more use out of their building than others. This is just a collage of Black's Drive-In, and I apologize for these, but this was something I did for something else, and I didn't take them off. But I also worked at Templeton's, and that's another story. So, but there you can see that Black's had a dance, and believe it or not, this is me when I was working at Black's. Do you know who this is? Marie Wills. Okay. Oh, and those three in the middle on the porch, those were some troublemakers. Oh, boy. Oh, okay, next. This is not the real slip from Black's. It's one that I made up, but it's exactly like what we had. And I want you to note that everything was done by hand. I did not write this, so you won't be able to read it. My wife wrote this. But you got 2 HBs, which was hamburgers. They had ketchup and pickles, and they were 2 for $0.25. Okay? Otherwise, they were 15 cents. And a French fries, 15 cents. A chocolate shake was 20, and there was 2 Cokes that were 10 cents a piece. So it was 80 cents. And then the other thing we did is, we would figure this out by hand, and we did have a tax card, so we knew how much tax to charge. There was a thing on a register. But we actually, in those days, knew how to take money, count money, and give money back. And I think that's a lost art nowadays. Okay, next. This is typical Black's Drive-In attire. I'm kind of dressed in it. I look exactly the same as I did in 1968. However, my hair's a little gray, I have glasses, and I'm 100 pounds heavier than I was then. But otherwise, this is the same outfit, And you can see him, he's got the notepad. I mean, that's just typical what they did. Okay, next. Black's Drive-In ad. This is kind of interesting. This was in 64 or 5. A perch dinner complete meal was 60 cents, shrimp was 70, and chicken was $1. Chicken was more than shrimp. Now that's reversed. So, and you can have a sundae either plain or fancy. Have it any way you want it. Okay, and car hop service. All right, next. Yes, it's true. Our hamburgers, they're 15 cents. These ads, they're just a hoot. So, and that was still a self-service drive-in at that time. All right, next. And then in 65, they opened with inside seating and a canopy, and that was really a big deal because that brought a lot more people in, and it had a lot bigger menu and stuff. Now, there was a drawback because a lot of the teenagers hung out there, and sometimes that wasn't the best for families that wanted to come in and eat. Okay, next. Now, this is hard to believe, but it's true. Many years ago, I went to buy a jukebox. A friend of mine told me there was a jukebox for sale. And when I went to look at it, I said to the guy, I said, "This looks like the jukebox from Black's." And he said, "It is a jukebox from Black's. When they closed, I took it home." So I have Black's jukebox in my basement. And as you can see, that's my basement. I have a soda fountain, and I have booths and everything. I never quite let go of Black's completely. So. This was a big deal. Black's had a back-to-school dance in 65. They had a local band called the Yorks that come and played. And the Appleton went nuts. All of the city fathers wanted this thing shut down. They didn't want them to have it. And the council met and could find no law against having the dance. So Police Chief Wolf said, as long as the dancers contain their wiggling to private property, this is a real ad. This is out of the paper. They will be within the law. If there's any dancing or walking in the street, Chief Wolf warned, they will shut the thing down and not be able to dance. And that's reprinted from the Post-Crescent. Now go to the next one. And that's the actual article. It's amazing what they went through. But we had the dance, nothing went wrong, and we actually had, I think, 3 of them. Black's closed in 1968. I remember this vividly. In 1967, Burger King came in on Wisconsin Avenue. And I asked Pete Black, "Do you think this is going to affect our business?" He says, "No, that won't have any bearing." 6 months later, we shut the doors. So it had a big bearing. They opened in 51, in 65 they remodeled, and in 68 they closed. And basically the announcement was Black sells property to Harold Wineland Insurance Agency on February 28th, 1969. And that was the end of Black's. And I had mentioned this before, it's been over 50 years since they closed, and yet we have had 4 reunions with the people that stayed there, and we've had as many as 45 people come, and it's just hard to explain. There are a couple people from here, I don't know if they'll say anything, but it's a tight group.
More than 45 at that one meeting.
Yeah, we might have had more. I just picked the number because there were some that had maybe 25. But think about that. These same people have been coming for decades. So, all right. And I still think growing up in the 60s is about as good as it got. I know the 50s would argue that was good too. But and this is Black's Drive-In now. It is the insurance company. Okay, Burger Chef. This was out by Valley Fair on Gaminer Road. It opened in 67 and closed in 74. And again, now the prices are still pretty moderate here. And that was the building. It's all gone now. It's home of the greatest 15-cent hamburger. I don't know if that was true, but that's what they advertised. Okay, next. Then we have Tom's Drive-In. He opened in 1960 and is still operating in various locations. He was over by Tallulah Park. This was his grand opening. Actually, I have some Tom stuff on the table back there. I have a bag from 1960 that they gave me. Okay, next. That's the bag, and look at the phone number. We used to have to say it was Regent, and then the phone number. Of course, now it's 73. This is his first drive-in, and again, it's not much more than a box. You know, it's just a little square building with the facilities to do what you have to do. And it was takeout only, seating in your car. That's the original building from another side. This is in 74 or 5, I think, 4, when they remodeled, and that's the original Tom's by Tallulah Park you just saw with a new facade on it. All right, and that's Tom and his wife. And this is the story. They started out in 1960. Basically, he had his little drive-in, and he worked there kind of part-time, and he worked at a paper mill, and she raised the kids, and then in 74 they started building on and adding on and you know, building more drive-ins. And that story is now printed on their bag. It's kind of a neat story. And they talk about the reason they're successful is they had a good price and good service and you know, good workers. And that's kind of a hallmark for any business. Okay, next. And that restaurant now is a hair salon. So restaurants must make good hair salons. That's the third one. Hardee's Drive-In on 1915 North Richmond Street. That opened in 74 and closed in 92. And again, I think that was part of Carl's Jr. bought them and they started closing things down, and you know, that it just went by the wayside. Next. Former Hardee's now it's a wine, like a little bistro kind of thing. That just opened up, huh?
It's a bakery.
Oh no, now it's not a bakery anymore, is it?
Yeah, Whiscanero just.
Really? I thought it sold wine.
Nope.
Okay. Oh, it's a bakery. All right. And it was an Indian cuisine, I think, at one time too. Okay, next. Tasty Freeze, that opened in 69 and closed in 72. That was over on Oneida Street, and I don't really have any information on it. Nord Marks owned it. I don't know who he was, but again, a lot of these, you know, they came and went as the big guys came in. Burger King, they were at 833 West Wisconsin Avenue, and they opened in 67. They're still operating, but now they're at 935. So they moved down a block. They moved to that Gibson car lot. And if you get a Whopper, you get a free shake. What was Burger King's slogan? It takes 2 hands to handle, because the Whoppers are bigger at Burger King. All right, this is the Burger King restaurant on Richmond, and this is the Burger King restaurant now, and it's a Subway. And then this is the new Burger King, which I showed you earlier. That's in the new location, and that's probably there to stay because they just remodeled it about 2 years ago. JD's Drive-In. He opened in 1968 and has been operating under the same ownership. Now, there is a difference between Tom's and JD's. Tom's has had family members go through and run it, and Tom is retired. JD has been in that place with his family for 53 years as the sole proprietor, and I think it's absolutely amazing. These are some of his earlier ads. He had 6 for $1. And what else did he have here? He's open 7 days a week. He's now open 6 days a week. This is an early rendering of his building before it expanded and grew. And unfortunately, the tree's gone. This is his sign out front, and I took this just by chance. I was there one day. I was taking a picture of the sign for this, and it said "God bless" on there, and I think that's really special. JD has supported numerous charities over the years, and this one that's near and dear to his heart, one of his family members has juvenile diabetes, and he has supported this probably for 25 years or more. And that's just the kind of operation he runs. Next. This is a spattering of the teams that JD has sponsored over the decades. And I figured, you know, if you take 5 teams a year times 50, that's a lot of teams that he sponsored. And there's pictures all over in there of this stuff. Next. JD had an annual car show. I don't know if you can appreciate this, but this is less than half of the car show. It was across the street, it was down the street, it was over here. This was just a picture they took. It was monstrous. And it just got out of control. There was nowhere left to have it, and cars just kept coming, so JD had to stop having it. The car show that you see the cruise at night, there's a car show at the Fox Valley Tech, and then in the evening they go down the avenue and make one lap. That spawned from JD's car show. That car show moved out to the Tech when JD couldn't have it anymore. This was JD's 50th anniversary logo. He had a big shebang that year. He had specials and giveaways, and then he had a nice car show. Next. And here they are. This is actually him and his son Joe at the 50th, still smiling. And this, they had car hops that night. They weren't ordering. They were just, I think they were giving out popcorn and stuff. They weren't taking orders, but they were on roller skates and had pool skirts, and I believe grandchildren. Is that grandchildren? Yeah, these are his grandchildren and his daughter. And this is the logo. This is kind of interesting. I started going to JD's in 1968, and that is a 1968 Chev. So that's from 1968 when he opened. And then the other one is the new car, and what it's showing is how the cars have changed over 50 years, and you know, a blast from the past car show. It was really a nice time. This is something I think is really special. JD on his slip, on everyone it says, "Thanks, God bless you." And I really think our country and our town could use more Christianity than we have now. And I really, my hat's off to him, because that's a pretty bold thing to put out nowadays with all of the different opinions people have of religion and freedom in America. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, next. JD's is a family-run business for 53 years. All of his children have worked there at one time or another. Now he, his wife Pam, and son Joe operate the drive-in. JD's has been a tremendous friend of the Appleton community through donations, team sports sponsorship, and funding of various charities. JD also has provided a dynamic training base for young people entering the work field. I've always said companies would love to have JD's employees because they're so well trained. I started going to JD's in 1968. I've continued going there year after year. Now Lori, my wife, and our children and grandchildren go there. JD always greets us with a smile. "How are you doing?" And when we order, and we enjoy his delicious and affordable food. I want to thank everyone for coming. I hope you learned something, and if at least I hope you reminisced and went back in time and had a few fond memories. So I appreciate you coming. Thank you.